A vacation to Napa Valley on any other day would be a pleasant and relaxing trip to the countryside. Today is not that day, however, as SimRacing drivers head to the racetrack at Sears Point, known as Sonoma Raceway. There will be no relaxing today, but there will be a hard-fought race in the iRacing.com simulator in round 3 of the SPEC MX-5 SimRacing Challenge. At the end of our 9 rounds, the driver crowned champion will have earned his spot to test a real SPEC MX-5 Challenge race car. Road America in Wisconsin and Summit Point in West Virginia held our first 2 rounds, but the third will take us all the way across the country to California, where drivers like Ryan Maloney, Paul Darling, and Jonathan White seek to snap their winless streaks at Sonoma. Kyle Heyer alongside Tom O'Gorman tonight, 4-time winner in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge Series and 2-time champion in the Pirelli World Challenge Series. Tom, welcome. Sonoma, this is a 12-turn, 2-mile road course. Tonight, we're on the short course variant, the one that NASCAR ran for so many years. A little different than the long course, but going to be super fun nonetheless.
Yeah, I'll kind of throwing everything at these drivers in the first 3 weeks, and I think the biggest thing coming into tonight is we're on week 3 of this championship, and you mentioned it in the broadcast intro there, that there are really high stakes on the line. You get to come race one of these cars or drive one of these cars in real life if you win this championship. And back at the beginning of the season, we were talking about the first day of school jitters and getting into the season. Now we're into the season, and being consistent is super critical for the drivers who have started off strong, and really starting to deliver is really critical right now at this stage for drivers who haven't had the best start to the season.
Absolutely. 12 minutes left to go in qualifying here. We've got 2 races coming up here tonight. It'll be a 15-minute, then a 20-minute following, and we're going to set our race 2 grid by the way the drivers finish in race number 1. As I mentioned, this is the 2-mile variant of Sonoma Raceway here, Tom. It's a little bit different. If you're used to sports car racing on Sonoma, this is not a familiar racetrack to you, but if you've watched NASCAR for many years, this will look very familiar.
You do get to keep that momentum up. It starts there on the left side of your screen, a huge climb up from turn 1 into turn 2, a really challenging braking zone. Honestly, turn 2 is at a higher elevation than the top of the grandstands down at start-finish line. That's how high the climb is, and then it continues to climb even further up at turn 3, kind of turns 3A and B. Big curb hops there, and then onto that NASCAR short course. Big curb hop at turn 5, dodge the wall on it, or sorry, turn 4, dodge the wall on exit, then get the car woed down into that big run through the S's. I don't know how many S's are there, but they only number 3 of them, turn 6, 7, and then 8. And then our probably prime passing opportunity coming into turn 9 there at the bottom end of the drag strip, a hairpin turn back onto the start-finish straightaway.
It's a really interesting racetrack. I got the chance to go here a couple months ago, and I was just blown away by how awesome of a track this is for spectators especially. You can see all the grandstands built into the hillsides here, and as you look around this racetrack, it is a gorgeous one. Probably a bit more gorgeous in the spring than it is modeled here in iRacing, a little bit burned out, but the chute, that's what we're running here today, added in 1998, and that section over here is what we're looking at. This is the turn 4A corner that was added in 1998. You see that big berm on corner exit. You're going to fly over that. That's all fair game, all fair racetrack to run on. But there's that wall at corner exit. Tom, if you make a mistake here, it is going to cost you your race.
Well, it's high stakes, and you got to jump the curb on the entry to that corner as well. And anytime the car leaves the ground, it really inserts a question mark for when it lands and what's going to happen. The other question mark here is speed versus distance. Do you want to carry that speed in these momentum-driven MX-5s, or do you actually not really want to go out and scare that wall so much and be a little bit more efficient about it? So we're going to see drivers taking different lines, but it does open up a great passing opportunity at a relatively passing-limited track here at Sonoma Raceway. And you're looking at that braking zone down into turn 5. You see how wide it can be. It's a little bit enticing to shove your nose in there, maybe even when you don't have the right to.
And just to ease any confusions, yeah, this is turn 5 technically on the NASCAR course. However, the naming convention for the short course layout actually calls this turn number 7 to be consistent with the rest of the racetrack. So just for to keep everybody on the same page, this is going to be turn 7. As confusing as that is, I think Sonoma might have one of the most confusing corner numbering schemes of any racetrack in the country. The S is I think about 8 or 9 corners, but they only counted as 3. So I don't know who was making the track map, but I saw one at the racetrack that was even more confusing than the way iRacing numbers them. So who knows what the corners are called, but we're going to stick with convention tonight. Cars on the racetrack qualifying here, and I mentioned some of the drivers earlier that we have to keep an eye on tonight, trying to get their first wins of the season. Ryan Maloney, Paul Darling, Jonathan White. Darling came within a half a lap of winning at Road America in the second race of the season in round number 1. But he has not found victory lane at all this season, and I think this is about time for him to get to victory lane.
For sure, and he's one of the drivers, if you look at the 4 races we've had this season, he's got 3 really good results. He's been in the top 5 every single race, but he has a really big problem with the goose egg in that race that he was on the way to win and had that incident with another driver. So that is one of those things where you can kind of rely on someone having a bad race somewhere throughout the season, but it's drivers like Paul Darling who have to continue to finish in the top 5 and top 3, whereas other drivers like our current top qualifier, Nathan Saxon, he's got 2 wins, a second and a 4th on the season. He's so consistent right now that he can honestly afford a slip up, but the more consistent he stays, along with a number of other drivers around, they just get, that much more relief as we continue through this 16-round season.
Having a look here at the weather information as well. Air temp about 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Track temp is 94. That's getting a little bit toasty. And when you're talking about short races like this, longevity has never really been too big of an issue. But with the ABS in these cars, Tom, this kind of street level ABS, how concerned are you for drivers keeping the tires up underneath them, especially in the twisty and tight braking zones that we have here into turn 11 specifically, where we'll see probably most of our passing today?
Yeah, we have heard a number of drivers talk about the grip available as it kind of progresses through the race, and you're right, closing in on 100 degrees will make the surface pretty slippery. But honestly, as a spectator, the thing that I've seen more as a problem is people missing the downshifts and blowing engines, and that's a pretty deep braking zone there down into the hairpin at turn 11. I think we may see a couple of these power plants go boom down in there if the drivers aren't careful.
Yeah, you got to make sure you're not over-revving on the downshift. So I want to thank our sponsors again for helping out with this season of the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. SCDA is with us. Founded in 1995, the Sportscar Driving Association, the SCDA, provides the driving enthusiasts the opportunity to experience high-performance driving in a safe and controlled environment. SCDA events are non-competitive and driver educational with a focus on safety and fun. They welcome you, everyone from novices with no track experience and seasoned track drivers and racers. You can check them out at www.scda1.com to learn more. Again, Penguin RC Simulation with some sim racing prizes on the line every round of the season. So thanks to Penguin RC. Link to them is in the video description, as well as Level Up Racing School, providing the season-end prizing worth over $5,000 to the driver that wins this championship. And you mentioned how good Nathan Saxon was so far this season, how consistent he has been. Right now, he's also the fastest by 22 thousandths over a newcomer, Brandon Hawken, in this 99, who got his first win at Summit Point last week. So this guy came right out of the gate firing on all cylinders here, Tom. That yellow and white car, I think he's going to be pretty good again here tonight.
He did. He's been super consistent, and as you mentioned, got his first win. Really took advantage of when Nathan Saxon got muscled out of the way in the first race, the shorter of the two last week at Summit Point. So if he can continue this streak, he's absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, every bit in this championship as Saxon is. He's there in 4th. He did have the problem with Paul Darling back at Road America, so he's got one kind of relatively poor finish. It's really only the top 3 that have great results in the book. Nathan Saxon, Ryan Maloney, and then Jonathan White. But the only one in those top 3 that has won is Saxon.
So Nathan Saxon currently topping the board right now in qualifying. There's Chris Hannon, the 33. We call him the postman because he likes to send it. So we'll see how he can do here in a little bit. So race 2 is going to be 15 minutes instead of 20 tonight. A little bit of an adjustment here for this evening. Going back to the track layout, we sort of talked briefly about how this track differs from the full course here at Sonoma Raceway. This is an interesting a change, I think. If we look down on the racetrack here, Tom, I'm going to highlight this for everybody at home. This is the layout we're running up here at the top, running this longer, or I guess the shorter way around. The blue line here is the typical course that you're familiar with if you run sports cars at this racetrack. I'm willing to bet you that a lot of the drivers here tonight have never run this layout here in iRacing, and there is definitely this corner up at the top left of your screen, turn 4A. There is a lot to be learned over there. There's a way to carry speed and a way to screw it up, and I bet you a lot of people are going to have trouble making speed out of that. Drivers, I think, will have no problem. Riley Thompson in the 58, he comes from a bit of a stock car racing background here in iRacing. So does Thomas Bressi, which I don't see on the timing and scoring column just yet. But if you've raced around here in iRacing and the NASCAR stock car stuff, you're going to know where you're going. You're going to know how to be fast through turn 4A.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me there is just having to use the curb and figuring out where you need to place the car so that it lands consistently every single time. As I mentioned in the intro, every time the car leaves the ground, there's a bit of mystery with what's going to happen when it comes back down, and there is a style to, or a skill to landing and going airborne properly, using that curve properly. As you see, it's just a massive leap in these relatively soft, mostly stock MX-5s. Drivers coming straight at us. Was that Chris Henn scaring us at the camera there? But again, if you are used to the rhythm of that, it's such an advantage in not only carrying speed through turn 4, but then again the passing down into turn 7.
Absolutely, and it was not the 33 that hit that fence. It might have been Luke. No, it couldn't have been Luke Pfeiffer. Maybe it was. I got to go back and check it out because he definitely hit it pretty hard. Here is a look on board here, Tom, and nailing this just right. Just missed it just a little bit. Ran wide. Right here, he's going to clip the fence. Right there.
And it really doesn't take much of a hit to really ruin stuff, and we've seen body damage kind of come into effect a number of places this season. If you get a little bit of body damage early on, muscling through the field or maybe tagging a wall like that, the aerodynamic speed drops pretty significantly, and it has put a number of drivers out this season. The other driver I'm keeping an eye on is Nick Delcampo, who sits down there at 8th. He picked up his first win in race 2 last week at Summit Point. He sits 5th in the championship, maybe 6th as I scroll down, but he is barely in the top 10 right now, and while they're not spread by that much, 3/10, every position matters big time in these short races.
Again, for those watching at home, if you're wondering where we are, what we're doing, this is iRacing.com for the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge. The champion goes on to test one of these cars in the real world, one of these awesome NC SPEC MX-5 Challenge cars. This is round 3 of 9, and they're run approximately every 2 weeks until the end of April or May. I can't remember off the top of my head. But this, again, is iRacing, so if you're curious on how to learn how to join this series, it's too late for this season, but keep your eye out for potential season in 2022. SPEC MX-5 Challenge's website will have more information on that. Another driver to keep an eye on, Alex LaRose. Constant improvement, I think, for this 26 driver, Tom, but minimizing mistakes has been a challenge so far.
Yeah, he's had a little bit of a rough season, and speaking of experience and joining this series, you see that LaRose has a white base paint job on that car. That means he's new to the season this time around. He's basically a rookie, and that doesn't necessarily mean that he's not fast. It just means that he's not been in the SPEC MX-5 Challenge before. The cars with a kind of medium gray paint job as their base are drivers who have raced in the series before, but either didn't run a full season or finished outside of the top 20 in points last year. And then the black liveried cars are the most experienced drivers that have run in the championship and finished in that top 20. So you can kind of decipher and make an assumption on which base color is on that car. You're going to see a lot of the black cars toward the front. Those are the most experienced drivers, but we do have a good mix of everybody in there. And I think LaRose is a perfect example of a driver that has a lot of speed, but occasionally it does show that he's less experienced than someone like Paul Darling or this 53 Taylor that we're watching.
And a big thanks to Stephen Burbage from Night Fox Designs for building these out for us, all these liveries that every driver in the field is running here tonight. We've got 37 drivers lined up for this one. That's a pretty big grid. We've talked at length about this racetrack, but we've got our keys to the race we'll pull up here as soon as we get to the gridding process here, Tom. But one of our keys to the race, I'll give you a hint, it has where to pass. This is not a long straightaway racetrack like we had at Road America or Summit Point where there is a distinct passing opportunity. It's going to be a little bit rough and tumble. I think maybe there's one sort of clear-cut one. That's the hairpin down at turn 11. Everywhere else, you're going to have to basically race this racetrack, setting yourself up for that final corner. I'm not sure that you can get passes done cleanly and consistently anywhere but turn 11.
Definitely, and that's why being consistent is even more important too, because if you're consistent, passing you is going to be hard. But I think we have a really cool range of tracks to open up the season. Road America, you've got 7-8 straightaways that drafting is really critical here in these MX-5s. Summit Point, for most of the track, you're not drafting, but then you have a massive front straightaway that kind of resets every lap and you get a chance to catch back up. Here at Summit Point, there isn't one of those big, obvious straightaways that drafting is going to bring things back together. And so you make the perfect point that passing might be at a premium, but this might also be where raw pace really shines. Interestingly, though, in qualifying, the pace is really tight, only 3 or 4 tenths amongst the top 15.
Well, it was Nathan Saxton that won pole for our first of 2 races here tonight. 20 minutes and then 15 to round out the rest of the evening. On your starting grid here, Tom, we're going to start and kick things off with Nathan Saxton on that front row. It's Brandon Hawkin on the outside of that front row. Then Chris Henn, Chris Taylor, row number 2. Paul Darling, Luke Pfeiffer in row number 3. Ryan Maloney, Nick Delcampo, row number 4. Mark Palunin in the 38 car rolls off in 9th alongside Steve Ficacci. Then Alex LaRose, Mitchell Peak, 11th and 12th. Jack Sanchez and Carter Kundinger sharing row number 7. Ismael Basso, Riley Thompson, row number 8. Jordan Bachmeyer, Christopher Namick in row number 9. And Gustavo Purgato, Thomas Bresci in row number 10. Kevin Zhu, Greg Profeta start 21st and 22nd. Behind them, George Fike and Logan Walker, 23rd and 24th. Max Bauman in the 89 and Brian Chabelski will share row number 13. Then behind them, Alex Jensen and Renaud Roland Hubert in 27th and 28th. Matthew Cridland, 29th, alongside Scott McIntyre. Scott Angelo, Brian Sohn in row number 16, and Michael Doling. Hopkins, Croft, Ty, and Tullo running out the rest of your field. Keys to the race here, Tom, on the right of your screen. First things, where to pass, where to get it done.
Again, there's really only 2 obvious passing zones. So 1, who can be creative? 2, who can be consistent? And 3, when do you want to try to make that move if you can control it? Maybe you make it as soon as you first can. A lot of times, waiting is key in these MX-5 races. That might not be an option tonight.
Watch the walls, turn 4 especially. It will bite you. Make sure that you keep your car out of the fence here, and also on the entry to the final corner on the right-hand side of the screen. You see this pit wall. A lot of drivers like to cheat over to the left. Don't hit that. I've seen it too many times to not warn everybody about it. Stay away from the fences here. Then curb strikes, Tom. These cars handle curbs pretty well, but you don't want to be mounting them every single lap, every single time, especially if you're next to somebody.
Because we mentioned consistency is key. If you get one bad bounce on that landing, all of a sudden the door swings open and you might get freight trained.
The keys to the race are complete. Having one last look here at the weather information. Track temp has climbed just a little bit, so be kind to your competitors, be kind to your tires. Of course, we've got Ryan in the behind the scenes, kind of making sure, keeping everybody in check with penalties. We've seen a handful of those so far this season at a tight and twisty racetrack like this. Keeping out of the way of your competitors and not running into them is going to be a big, important point. Keep on the black stuff, don't run into each other. That's pretty much the key every race to finish well, but especially so here at Sonoma.
Yeah, I'm not sure we've actually had a race where a penalty has not been assessed yet, so it has absolutely affected standings throughout this entire championship. And one of the drivers on the front row there kind of suffered an impact to that. He was caught up in an incident with Paul Darling and was assigned responsibility for the incident, and he went from the race winner to finishing just inside the points. He scored 1 point in that race. So those penalties are very real, and that's something that is really special about this series, in my opinion. Having a real race steward, not just relying on this being a video game to self-police itself. This is treated just like a real race weekend, and that's even more critical for someone who does win this championship to have that experience and go to a real race for the first time. And
that's the beauty of iRacing specifically, is it pulls away as much of the game experience as possible and really focuses on the simulation aspects here. All the drivers here are heel towing on the downshift, or at least getting very good at rev matching. You got to shift these cars properly, you got to drive them properly. You can't get away with a whole lot here that you wouldn't be able to in the real world, which is a good thing, because if you win the championship, you better know how to drive them, because you get the chance to drive one, Tom. So you don't learn how to cheat, because you're not going to be able to apply that in the real world.
Certainly, and also interesting to see the single file warm-up lap. A lot of times here in iRacing, you'll see a double file, and then they packed up and paired up there at the back of the S's. This pairing up process is kind of stacking the field up quite a bit as Saxon backs way off the pace car to bring him to the green flag.
Yeah, we've got 37 drivers toward Thor Tullo and the way back. That's a whole lot of rows of race cars, and can we get them all through lap 1 without incident? This is one of the best series I've ever seen in iRacing, especially on that first lap. We'll see if they can impress me again here today. 15 laps worth of racing from Sonoma for SPEC MX-5 Challenge in the sim racing world here in iRacing. Green flag flies, and we're virtually racing at Sonoma. Double file start, and a slow one. They waited a long time to get the green. They actually get the green flag from the steward. And now down to turn number 1, Saxon clears Brandon Hawken as they climb the hill towards turn number 2.
One of the shortest runs up to the first braking zone. You see the whole field, it kind of naturally pushes you out to the right, but then you're turning right at the top of the hill. Everybody single file, nice and clean through the first 2 corners, but then this really tricky and even more single file run through turn 3, hopping curbs, still single file outside the top 10.
Getting airborne side by side. I think that's Del Campo that had a driver out to his left as we head down to turn number 4. Watch the fence here on corner exit. Saxon cutting it close. So will everybody as they jump the berm here at the exit of the corner. Huge air for some of the drivers in the mid-pack.
Still getting things sorted out. Pfeiffer scared the wall again. Almost didn't learn his lesson from qualifying, but everybody is through on the wall this time. 15 laps to go. Still bickering side by side through the turn 7 and into the S's.
Ooh.
But up at the front, ooh, there was a moment. Up at the front, things streaming out pretty nicely.
That was Christopher Namick having a bit of a bobble at the exit at turn 7. He's got Kevin Zhu behind him. That was real tight. He's still slipping and sliding. Can he gather it back up 3 wide through the S's? Bauman will take advantage of it. Meanwhile, out front, Saxon has a lead. Hawken is there. Looks like he's going to be patient and sit on it for now.
for now, but how long do you do that? Again, patience may not be the key for tonight. Hen looking up the inside again, shows the nose, a big dive for the gray car up the inside, the 56 of Peak, showed the nose on the entry and didn't quite get the job done. Man, things are still really busy back here in the bottom 20.
Yeah, not a lot of opportunity to get things very spread out, but no incidents that I can see on the first of 13 laps, rather, as we come on through. So nicely done. We haven't had any contacts or any major scares, but Saxon leads the way at the top of the hill. Hawkins sat on it. I'm a little surprised he didn't take the opportunity to go for it here, Tom. This is not a racetrack where you're going to want to sit and basically draft until the last lap like we saw at Road America. I think you want to have the lead here tonight.
Yeah, I think if he gets back to the bumper in the exact same spot that he was that time through, he'll probably go for it, but it looks like Saxon is really delivering on the second lap. Big outside move from Darling there, almost caught the wall, I think that was. No, it was Chris Taylor in the slightly more neon yellow car there running in the fourth spot, trying to keep up with Hen. It looks like really the pace of Saxon and Hawken, though, is shining right now.
Yeah, they are beginning to pull away. Chris Hen is 6/10 behind Hawken. Hawken is 3/10 back from Saxon. So all single file now. The entire field has gotten that way. They've sorted things out. And now it's sort of the calm, this portion after the start of the race when people haven't run over each other yet. Nobody's mad yet. They haven't been sitting behind following somebody for 5 laps. I think those tempers will start to rise as the frustration ensues. Look at Jack Sanchez. He's got some damage to that right rear. I don't see any car that belongs to. Ismael Basso's front bumper looks clean, so I don't think he's the guilty party in that one.
No, Basso was really quick last week at Summit Point, but has been, I think, a 2-time offender of blowing motors there in that number 40 car, so he's sitting in the 15th spot trying to get forward. These two bickering as well, Darling and Taylor. Darling looks like he picked up the spot down in turn 11 and resumes 4th place. So the yellow and slightly neon yellow cars swapping positions. Luckily didn't lose too much time either, and it looks like Hen has really turned up the wake in the first couple corners of this lap and is starting to run back down Hawken and Saxon to make it a 3-car breakaway at the front.
Yeah, Hen is definitely picking up the pace. Last time by, though, was a little bit slower, about 3/10 slower than the drivers in front of him. Paul Darling, as you mentioned, got through for 3rd in that yellow car. Real close to that fence at the exit of turn 4. Makes me nervous every single time. Mitchell Peak in the 56, that's the orange car, following Steve Ficacci's number 51. And Steve has been quietly running at the back half of the top 10 for a handful of seasons here. He's had some runs up inside the top 5, but the pace just isn't quite there each year. I think he's looking forward to potentially getting some better runs. We go to Mid-Ohio next round, a couple weeks. We'll see if he can turn things around.
Yeah, he comes into this race right now tied for 7th in the championship. He did have a no points scored on the first round of this season, so that's really hurting him, but otherwise has been super consistent. So he's on the road to continue that trend right now. He is losing touch quite a bit with the top 9, though. If you see, top 10, there is a big gap between LaRose in 10th and Ficacci there and the rest of the field.
Logan Walker punting a cone there on the corner entrance to pit lane. Scott McIntyre in pit road, and I didn't see him actually go down there, so I wonder if this was a reset situation. It looks like it. Whoa, there's a crash back here. He went off the course. This is McIntyre we're looking at, back across the racetrack, and I'll bet you he's going to find himself almost in the fence. I didn't see what car that was turned around. It was the 68 car of Scott Angelo, and just caught the curb here. And does he crest the hill and get some dirt? Yes, just the slightest little bit there, Tom, and sends the car around.
One thing that blew me away the first time I came to this track is how blind that corner actually is, and I don't even know that it's well represented here in the simulator, but it is such a blind entry as you crest that, what is becoming then the flat out portion of the S's. You're full throttle and trying to get on throttle as early as possible, and it is easy to miss that by just a little bit, but it's a pretty significant 25, maybe 30 foot drop there as you transition from, I guess, turns 8 to 9 in these S's.
Well, let's ride on board here with Jordan Bachmeyer in 16th, up 1 spot. Has a look to the inside of Basso, climbs the curb, and you're going to see right here, Tom, how that track drops away. All that car in front almost disappears entirely from view. And now he's alongside Basso. And whoop, they're going to touch into turn 8, and then 9, and in here into 10. A little bit of paint trading, and here comes Riley Thompson in the black number 58.
Bachmeyer gets the spot, but Basso's going to want it back. He protects to the inside. Thompson's going to try to follow him through, but Basso around the outside with the momentum gets the power down. That's a really great run, and if you can hang on to that one, it becomes the inside for the front straightaway. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for Basso in the 40 car, but if you can make that stick later in the race, that might be the key to running to that checkered flag. I don't know that it's totally possible, though.
Well, Logan Walker just had an issue as well. Didn't see where he was running, but also reset back to the pits. I'm going to bet that he had a mistake right here into turn 10. Car was already yawed out sideways. He's probably going to run wide. No, didn't. He's just going to head straight to pit lane. I didn't see if he had picked up a penalty or not, but into pit lane and done for the night.
No, unfortunately, I'm not in front of my normal computer, so I can't see race control as I normally do, but I suspect that might be to serve some sort of penalty. Otherwise, I can't imagine why he would be coming down the pit lane. But back at the front, Saxon Hawken continuing to lead the point. I don't know that Hawken has the pace to make the move if he's being patient or if he's flat out, because Saxon has been super consistent, kind of run the perfect race so far, and they're clearly the fastest two cars. But I haven't gotten a read yet on whether Hawken is being patient or is also running flat out. You can bet Saxon's running flat out.
Yeah, Hawken, that opening lap again, wasn't in much of a rush to get by Saxon. And you can see he's within 2 car lengths here heading into turn 11. I'll bet you when the white flag flies, you'd be willing to maybe dive down there and lean on the ABS a little bit more. But I think for now, he's not letting Saxon get away. That gap has been pretty constant at 3.5 to 0.4 of a second. I think he's just hanging out for now. I just don't think that's the strategy to do. I'd go up there. If I could pass him, I would pass him. That's making me second guess my hunch.
Perhaps, but he does have the blessing of a clear mirror behind him, as you can see that they're both really not under any pressure from Hen. Hen's not there, but he's not quite there to make a move as Hawken is on Saxon. Darling is clinging with him, and he's actually driven away from Taylor back at the front. But these battles deeper in the field, that's a really big train of cars coming through just outside the top 10.
Yeah, there's a handful of battles. Car around. Was that? That looks to be. Who was that?
That was a car that just came out of the pit lane and served a penalty. Yep.
McIntyre, sorry to cut you off. I was just trying to figure out which driver that was. And McIntyre was slow. He actually just pulled over to let the field by. The reason why I panicked was because it looked a whole lot like Brandon Hawkins' car, which is painted with a similar color gold, just on a white base. Behind him, trouble. That's a car spinning. That's Luke Pfeiffer. He's around him with big damage. So is a 26 LaRose.
And there was a third car involved in there, too. Is it the 38?
Yes, it's Palunin.
So LaRose gets a lot of damage, but is able to continue. The other 2 cars are stuck waiting for the rest of the field to come through. So LaRose is going to have to deal with that aerodynamic damage, but looks like he actually got turned to 38. And unfortunately, again, Alex LaRose, we mentioned it, has just not been in the right place at the right time this season and gets collected between these two, having had a little bit of a problem at the apex there at turn 7.
Yeah, here's a look. Here's a 06 going into turn 7. And the 30, oh, he came from a long ways back, Tom. That's definitely going to draw a penalty. And then the 06 bounces off and then catches LaRose, spins him right back across the traffic into the 38 car. So that was definitely a mistake and probably a penalizable one for the 38 of Palunin, but I'm sure the Stewart will take care of that.
Yeah, I don't know if that was just target fixation or what, but one thing we didn't talk about much is just sight lines here at Sonoma. Because of the elevation change in traffic and some of the blind corners, it's really easy to get target fixated on the car in front of you or just lose track of your references because you can't see them. And that's one of the most challenging parts about certain spots like turn 4, but easily there again into turn 7, there's not a great braking reference, and it looks like he might have just driven right past where he normally broke and realized way too late that he wasn't going to make it.
Here's Alex Jensen running in 25th. Right behind him is Matthew Cridland, who's only up 3 spots from where he started. Good battles going on back here. The other thing about this run down to turn 4A is the other part that makes it feel not natural is typically you come over the crest of 3A there, the right-hander over the crest, and you're almost immediately on the brakes for that very, very tight right-hander. Got to kind of recalibrate your brain to stay full throttle over that crest to run down to turn 4A.
That's one of those places where if you've driven this format, this layout, you have the muscle memory to kind of shift between the two. But if you're used to the sports car layout, you're totally right. You're used to jamming on the brakes much sooner than you do, and then you have to pick up a totally new reference point. So practice was probably pretty critical here, but the field getting pretty strung out in the top 10, even top 15, and things calming quite a bit with 9 laps to go.
Here's Carter Kundinger in this pink number 92 following Mitchell Peak. This is on the front straightaway here. Kundinger started this race in 14th. He's climbed 4 spots into 10th. Now, no field inversions or anything for race number 2. We basically start where you finish in the first race, so Kundinger liked to pick up as many positions as possible. Following Peak up to the crest here in 2. Climb that curb there to help the rotation, and then flat out on the run down to turn 3, you're going to get the car into compression, and then it goes the exact opposite over this crest. It's going to get super light. Even in these cars, got to watch the power. Right over the top, and the 56 tracks out a little bit wide there.
And that's one of those sightline spots. But I saw Carter Kundinger shared right before the race started that this was his break from studying and doing homework. And I think it's really kind of cool to point out that these are real people sitting in their houses respectively around the country, a couple of people from around the world, and they're taking breaks from real lives to become race car drivers for a very short period of time. And sometimes you don't get a ton of practice, sometimes life gets in the way, but these are real people, and a lot of them are very young. They're taking breaks from schoolwork or college studying, whatever it may be. And I think like balancing that is another factor that makes you excel or, makes you eligible to succeed in this championship.
Here's a pass for position. Kundinger down the inside, and you mentioned people with homework. Oh, that was a big slice for the 92 at Kundinger. Looks like Peak's going to cross him back over. Murphy Nichols was not able to make this race tonight because of school obligations, and that's probably prioritizing the correct thing, but it is a very real issue that actually can run into some of your desires to compete in a championship like this. You miss a couple rounds, Tom, it's going to hurt you a lot. But, again, prioritizing school, at least the thing your parents want you to do, and that's what I want Murphy to do tonight as well. So he is missing Sonoma for school.
Yes, this college dropout tells you stay in school. Check it out. Just took a little scan over to the left side. Looks like Chris Henn is all of a sudden very much in the fight at the front. I don't know what happened between the top two, but they've got the rest of the field coming back to them after they had been breaking away quite a bit. Maybe did they run their tires off? Maybe did Brandon Hawken pick a fight somewhere where we were looking away? But Chris Henn is heavily in his mirrors, and that is not where you want to see a number 33 number board in these SPEC MX-5 races.
No, we call him the postman because he likes to lick the stamp and send it and go down the inside. He is close. He's also dragged Paul Darling into the mix with him.
Speaking of sending it.
Oh, man. Here comes Paul Darling with a big run. There's a little bit of drama going on in the background. I think Kevin Zhu's been involved in something. We'll take you back there to look at it here in just a moment. Paul Darling with a huge head of steam, not going to waste any time down the inside for turn 11 on the binders. Can he slow it down? Henn's way in deep. Can he carry the speed? It looks like Darling will have this.
I think he's got it. Maloney was full send in the background, 4 tires in the dirt, gets a good momentum run into that final hairpin and is within attack distance to Henn as well. So Henn is all of a sudden falling the wrong way. Paul Darling, in a track that is hard to pass, has made incredible progress from, I think, 6th to 3rd right now.
Yeah, there's some issues back here. I noted some problems. Gustavo Pergado also involved with something, and gets tagged there off the racetrack and slams into the tire barrier. And I also mentioned Kevin Zhu having similar issues. I think this is a totally separate. Oh, he just disconnected. Internet failed there for him, unfortunately.
Yeah. We don't have mechanical failures simulated here, but they are somewhat simulated in hardware and internet. Unfortunately, Kevin falling victim to that. But that car snapped really fast there in the S's, and you're right, a hard impact into the tires.
Ryan Maloney closing in now. Their top 5 are all on top of each other. It's a full second back to Chris Taylor in 6th. Don't count him out, or Nick Del Campo, who won his first race of the season last week at Summit Point. Running through the S's, though, our top 5 are pretty strong together, but those front 2 edging out just a little bit over Darling and Henn after their position swap a lap ago at turn 11.
Yeah, that exchange was about as clean as it gets, but it did lose them some time. You can see the extra car lengths between them as the top 2 have gotten the gift of some gap. But the question is, I still don't think Hawken has anything for Saxon as far as a pass is concerned, unless he's really conserving kind of really, really sneakily. It looks like Saxon has pretty much got him covered kind of inch for inch everywhere around the track, and that's kind of the problem with Sonoma is you see a big lunge up the inside. Is that Del Camp? Nope, Ficacci?
It's Kundinger on Mitchell Peak. We've seen this before, and it didn't work out either time. He's just trying everything he can try right now. It just isn't working.
Definition of insanity. Try the same thing again, you get the same result, but he's still tooth and nail for that 10th position. But again, towards the front, I'm just waiting to see if Hawken has anything, but he hasn't convinced me that he does.
He's lingering, though. He's keeping that gap pretty constant. The question is he able to close it? That's really what your question is he's close enough maybe to dive, but is it good enough or close enough to be able to do it and not give the corner or position up on corner exit? You can probably get a little bit more aggressive here, too. That was really aggressive. Whoa, behind him, look at Nick Del Campo almost crushing that fence. And Ryan Maloney is being a nuisance to the back of Chris Henn right now.
Well, and you just saw that right there. Chris Henn was, as you said, like the stamp send it full time through turn 4. And then it just didn't really pay off for him. Maloney got a run on him, and Maloney was a lot cleaner through there. So Henn is ragged and pushing hard, but I think Maloney actually has the cleaner and better pace. It's just the problem of Sonoma was where do you go with that pace. Paul Darling is driven away from these 2 and is starting to run back down the top 2, but this is the closest Hawken has been. Look, 3 cars up the road. He's pretty close right now to Saxon.
Yeah, 2.5 tenths back into turn 11, and I wonder how much calculation is going on right now. How much later can he brake and still make the corner? I bet you that is a process going on in the calculator brain of Brandon Hawken right now. You've got 3 laps to go this time through, so you're going to have to start planning out your move. You just can't show your hand too early.
The question, we can call it the Kundinger if he isn't a little too deep. It just gets over under there onto the start-finish straightaway. I almost wonder if you can send it up the inside and park somebody at the apex. We've seen that work as well in a number of different races. If you really just kind of give them nowhere to go, but your back bumper, get a little bump draft onto that front straightaway, that might be an option too. But I do think that Hawken has had a couple of strong laps, but again, Saxon, inch by inch, inch for inch, covers him, and now has pulled that lead back out to 3 car lengths.
And make sure that you don't maybe put the effort in the wrong area. I think Chris Henn is lunging too deep into turn 4A. It's costing him time at exit. Again, you discussed in the pre-race if it's worth tracking out at the exit of turn 4, into that runoff area by the wall. I think yes, to an extent. And once you go a car length, or car width, I should say, beyond that berm, I think you're losing time and scrubbing off too much speed on that next short straight.
Absolutely. There's a happy medium at all times with motorsports. It's a game of speed and distance, and sometimes less distance is faster than more speed. And I think if you watch the body language of Chris Henn's car, as you see him, how much more ragged he looks and how much more distance he's using. Yes, it's feet and inches, but Maloney is cleaner and certainly faster as he has a look up the inside. And Henn's going to give him the run up the inside. Maybe opens the door, was feeling the pressure and wanted to breathe for a second. That was a very interesting moment there as Chris Henn now tucks back into 5th.
Yeah, well, it looks like that pass is complete. There was a bit of dramas back here in the S's. That's a big impact for Elijah Kloft, Michael Doling. These two have had a run together here through the S's. 78 car was in front. They just all got together. That was a weird-looking wreck.
I almost wonder, it looked like the 78 was trying to slow down and maybe clear a cut penalty of some kind. I don't know if you can get that there, but he checks up big time right here. You're going to see the car slow down, and all of a sudden, the cars behind are just going to kind of run him over.
I wonder if he missed a shift maybe, but
that's possible.
Something happened. Maybe we'll ride on board with that 78 and listen. And heading through the S's. Yes, it was a miss. Oh, that was a missed shift there. Oh, it was a missed shift, but it was a little earlier than I was expecting it. Didn't get the clutch up at the right time.
Sometimes I forget these are our 5 speeds, and a missed shift is a reality in these cars. 6 gears, and that's not super common in most of the cars in iRacing, and it happens.
So running down through the S's now, Saxon and Hawken. Look at how close Hawken is this time. We have 2 laps to go. We're getting down to it here, and he's within a 1/10.5 of a second. Now the run down at turn 11. This is where I think Hawken should just go for it, Tom. I don't know if you want to be second and have to make this desperation move in the last corner, but he's going to wait.
Well, he's certainly putting himself in a corner, but I said a couple laps ago he hasn't convinced me he's got the pace to put it there. He's there now. He's got me convinced. Now I'm going to scoot forward on my seat and see if he can pull it off. And I'm also really excited to see the finishing order of this race becomes the grid for the next race. That 55 car, I think, has actually been probably the strongest in this race because he came from 5th on the grid, made a number of passes, and is still with this top grouping, and that tells me that he's got a lot of pace. Paul's going to be fun to watch in the second one.
He certainly is. White flag is out. This is the final lap here at Sonoma. As we climb the hill through turn 3 and 3A, Hawken is close. I wonder if he'll make the move even sooner than turn 11, but then you just open yourself up for the opportunity to get it repassed. So if you do it in the final corner, you don't give him another chance to come back on you.
It is true. The opportunity for that will show itself right now. I don't think he's close enough. Does he show the nose? No, they're going to go single file again into turn 7. So one obvious passing opportunity, barring any mistakes. There's one chance for Brandon Hawken to pick up his 2nd win. Nathan Saxon's trying to score his 3rd win of the season, and anything could happen here.
Really, really close through the S's. Now there's some shuffling going on in the top 15 area between Sanchez, Thompson, and Basso. Now the run down to turn number 10. Hawken is close. He started second, running second. Saxon started first, running first. Will we see a swap in the final moments here in race 1 as SPEC MX-5 SimRacing Challenge round number 3? Saxon goes defense him. Hawken slides to the left, trying to hang on to the car. Now on the outside. Great defense by Saxon to run into turn 11. Here comes Darling with a run.
Oh, they all overshot it, but Saxon, super smart, covered it very early, gave Hawken almost no opportunity to respond to his early move, and kind of balked his momentum. Hawken with nowhere to go, and Saxon will take his 3rd win of the season.
Great defense by the 16 of Nathan Saxon. Some dramas behind. We got a drag race to the finish line here. Pete Kundinger and Jordan Bachmeyer, 9th, 10th, and 11th. They're going to string across the line nose to tail. Even behind them, Ismael Basso is side by side with Bresci. They've sorted that one out. And a handful of drivers still coming to the checker side by side. Now, this is why, going back to the race leaders, this is why I thought that Hawken should have tried something sooner, because he would have seen that that was the card Saxon was going to play, and he didn't get to experience it and just didn't know how to respond to it. He went driver's left and was not able to cross him over. Let's go. I'd like to go back and look at that one more time before we wrap this race up. But looking back, we'll go a little farther back here, Tom. Just the 16 went defensive, and he looked like he panicked. He didn't know where he was going to go after that. He didn't plan for it, and that lost him the race, I think.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting to talk to Hawken afterwards to see, did he even have the opportunity before that final lap, or did he take the entire race to kind of feel out getting the momentum, and was it truly down to that last lap move that he had the chance to make? But still an awesome finish at a track that is so hard to pass that. That's as close as it gets a lot of times here at Sonoma, and Saxon, with another great performance for his championship, takes a win and will inherit the pole for race 2.
Yeah, no chance to look at the results here before the session ticked over, but we'll bring them to you again at the start of race number 2 because they will grid how they finish for race number 1. All right, so we saw our first race of the evening. The second one will be slightly shorter. What did we learn? It looked like it was really hard to pass, which we knew, our keys to the race. We knew it was going to be hard to pass, Tom, but what do you do? What do you do different this time around if you know that now?
Well, one of the things that stood out to me, especially watching the battle between Hen versus Maloney, is I think it's easy to overdrive these cars, and a lot of times momentum obviously is key. Staying on throttle is king in these relatively low power spec cars, but I think the drivers that started to push too hard paid for it in the end. And certainly we saw it in real time with Hen, but I guarantee that was happening throughout the field. I think really clean, composed driving is really turning out to be the top move for this evening, because both drivers at the front were super clean. Paul Darling was another one that was super clean. Ryan Maloney was very tight and tidy, and I think that's paying dividends tonight.
I think so. I think tight and tidy is the way to do this. We saw in the background that Carter Kundinger was kind of launching down into turn 11. Outbraking someone down there seems to be hard to do without compromising your corner exit. So I'm curious to see, maybe for a learning experience for Hawken, if he'll try something in turn 7 next time, kind of mix it up. I think turn 11 is almost too obvious, and you're not going to catch anybody by surprise making a move down there. You might catch it by surprise somewhere else on the racetrack, and maybe that's worth trying at some point in race 2.
The other opportunity is right at the green flag. He's going to get the outside line into turn 1, but that is the inside line for turn 2, and that's not something that Saxon gets to pick. He's stuck on the left side. If you can carry your momentum around the outside of turn 1 with a good start at the green flag, it's not impossible to resume the lead from second place or from the right lane anytime coming into the first sequence of corners here. So it might actually come down to the green flag more so than the checker.
Kyle Heyer and Tom O'Gorman joining you for SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge here on the Winding Road Magazine channel. Thanks so much for watching. We've got another race coming up here in just a moment, so don't go anywhere. Again, this is a Sim Racing Championship held in iRacing. The champion at the end of this 9-round season will get to test one of these SPEC MX-5 Challenge race cars in the real world. Past winners of this series include DJ Alessandrini and Ken Hauseal. Alessandrini, a pretty well-known road racer in Grid Life Touring Cup, now has a Honda Civic that he runs in that series, but he ran at Road Atlanta last year with SPEC MX-5 Challenge and had a really good time. There's some great video of that on DJ Alessandrini's YouTube channel, but got that opportunity through this series. Ken Hauseal, because of the pandemic, is waiting for his chance, but he has already won himself that opportunity as well. And to my understanding, if you have a racing license with the SCCA, NASA, or other similar license, you're actually able to race the car as well. They'll give you an entry as an invitational. So that's pretty cool, Tom. Chance to literally go from the sim racing world to the real world, something that is often talked about, but not this accessible.
No, and I also have loved watching this series. Obviously, this is my first season as a commentator and watching the action as closely as I am, but these are people that I know personally, and it's fun to watch people participate in this series while the real world series has really started to grow. I think this NC MX-5 chassis has gained a lot of new breadth with real world motorsports, and it's still obviously simulated since whenever it was launched in iRacing back in, I think, 2013 or 2012, but maybe even before that. But these cars were not super common in the real world once they were kind of graduated out from this SPEC MX-5 series when it was a pro series. Now, after 3 or 4 or 5 years, it's really grown into its own destination. And yes, it still is maybe a ladder on the path to the global MX-5 series with the newest cars, but getting your foot in on SPEC MX-5 as a real world driver is truly a great place to be, in the same terms as any other pro series or growth series like SPEC Miata in club racing, etc. So it's kind of cool to see these guys have some relevancy in the sim where they're not just driving an old car for no reason. This is every bit as practical to real life.
Well, you know, you talk about the NC MX-5. Every time you talk to somebody about what do I get as my first track car, and everyone will always tell you the answer is always Miata. That doesn't matter what generation it is. I think, you know, the early generation Miatas are very, very accessible for people on a budget, and perhaps one of the best cars you can buy, period. I mean, they're relatively inexpensive. They last forever. They're super reliable, easy to find parts for, super fun to drive, and super lightweight, which is also really important when learning how to drive and carry momentum. Then the slightly newer generation, the NB generation, if you will, also a very popular track car. The NCs, again, as you mentioned, they're sort of coming around, becoming more popular as they go down in price for being a little bit older, but they are no less Miata than the NA or NB that, you could argue more popular generations, but this is a car that you're seeing more and more at racetracks around the country, and there's a reason for that. And as you mentioned, sort of a ladder system to Global MX-5, maybe, but definitely a good race car in every sense of the word. So as we go off here, pacing for our second of two races, this is your results from race number 1 and your starting grid for race number 2. And on the front row, it's going to be Nathan Saxon in that number 16 car alongside Brandon Hawken. They're going to go again in race number 2. Paul Darling, third podium in race 1. He'll start on the second row alongside Ryan Maloney in that 65. Another driver we expected to have won some races, and he has not yet gotten there. Going to start very, very close to the front. Then Chris Taylor in 5th and 6th, row number 3. Nick Del Campo, Steve Ficacci in row number 4. Mitchell Peak in the 56. Carter Kuntinger on his outside. They're going to go again. A rematch in race number 2 here. Jordan Bachmeyer in 11th alongside Riley Thompson, the youngster, the number 58. Jack Sanchez and Thomas Bressi start in 13th and 14th, row number 7. Row 8, Ismael Basso with the number 40. Greg Profeta in the 29 starts on his outside. Christopher Namek in the 74. Max Bauman will start row number 9. Then George Fike, Renaud Roland Hubert in 20th. Brian Jabelski, Matthew Cridlin, 21st and 22nd. Jensen and Sohn in row number 12. Raven Hopkins and Benson Tai start 25th and 26th. Mark Palloon in trouble in race number 1. Going to go again for race 2 alongside Thor Tullo in the 27 car. Scott Angelo, Elijah Kloft start 29th and 30th, right in front of Michael Doling and Alex LaRose. Trouble for them in the first race of the night. Kevin Zhu disconnected in the first race, will go again in 34th. Gustavo Pergato will start 35th alongside Luke Pfeiffer, bringing up the rear in race 2. Logan Walker will not make a start in this one, out and done for the evening. Saxon in the purple and gray, Hawken in the white and gold, going again for a second go here. Top predictions. Does Saxon wrap up another victory, or is Hawken there to snag one?
Well, I think Hawken learned a lot, and what we've seen for the first race is that the drivers that learn where to be aggressive and how to finish well in the first race sometimes have a better run in race 2. The drivers who have to defend in race 1 have to learn a whole different strategy if they get on the back foot. So Saxon needs to resume exactly how he started, but the green flag's out relatively early, a little bit of a stack up, but they're much more spread out this time.
Shorter race this time around, about 15 minutes worth of racing. Green flag is in the air, and we're green again here at Sonoma, climbing the hill. It's Saxon out front into turn 2. There's Chris Henn getting real aggressive on the curbing. And the left-hander climbing up the hill. Cars sideways in the background. I think that's the 17 of Kloft. He's off the racetrack. Pulls it back on just in time as we crest turn 2. A little bit messier there, as you mentioned, Tom, but I think we're through again.
It's a good move from Taylor, who sits in 6th. He's the black and neon yellow. Almost made the inside-outside move at turns 1 and 2 work on Henn, but Henn picked the spot back up. A little bit of a breakaway from the top 2. A carbon copy as one car goes for a huge hippity-hoppity over the curbs. Another one as well. Is that LaRose? No, it was a purple car, but a little bit more exuberant here at the start of race 2, which is kind of a trend we're seeing on this season.
A little bit braver, perhaps. There's some trouble. Oh, there's a car upside down and barrel rolling. That is the 68 car of Scott Angelo, tumbling down the back straightaway here. What happened? This is probably at the exit right there, coming out from the runoff area, the 0-1. Comes across the racetrack, gets into the 68 and turns him and trips him up and over. What a mess.
Ouch. Yeah, essentially a street circuit between these two corners in the chute, and unfortunately nowhere to go. He got turned at a car that was outside. That's really tricky because the outside is the common place to run, but the general rule is you don't have to let somebody back on the track. The question is, what's counted as the track, the yellow line or the pavement?
Well, the yellow line will certainly be considered the track by the steward. I think the drivers might disagree. If it's fair to race on, they're going to go out there, Tom, but you got to be coming back on course, in a fair way. Maybe the 0-1 McIntyre could have lifted there and prevented that situation from happening. Anyway, back up front, Saxon, Hawken, Darling. This is the car that you wanted to keep their eye on. I'm watching the 65 of Maloney. He's been too quiet for my taste tonight, and he's right there with the 55.
Yeah, I think those top four have been the cream of the crop as far as the way the car looks, the way it's behaving. Chris Henn looks like he's holding up Chris Taylor and Del Campo just a little bit. Del Campo was certainly hoping for a little bit stronger night after coming off that win in race 4 for the championship. But the top four, if you just watch the body language, again, those cars are just nice, tight, and tidy. Interestingly enough, Ryan Maloney is the only one that looks a little bit different. He's setting up for exits a little bit more. You're going to watch him turn in a little bit later. He's going to be a little bit wider, but it's really working for him. And it might get him a really good run down one of these straightaways, but still the top two look to have this one nicely in control. It's still 10 laps to go. That's a long way.
So Hawken learned last race that maybe waiting to the last lap isn't the move. Do you try something totally different and pass him now, or do you just do the same thing again? You mentioned earlier that's the definition of insanity, but I don't think the strategy here is to follow the 16 car.
No, I agree. He's got nothing to lose other than maybe getting another second place. Go for first as far as I'm concerned, and I think if you see him get that close again, we won't know until after whether he purposely waited that long or whether it came to him. But I think if he gets there, he's got to go for it.
A couple drivers with some pretty heavy damage. There's that 93 Raven Hopkins driving with that car looking a little bit contorted, you could say, back in 24th, still rolling. I didn't think that was going to be okay, but these NC's pretty strong cars. And we'll carry on. There's a 38 of Mark Palunin who had that trouble in the first race up the hill into 24th after starting this one in 27th, so up a few. A little eradicated through that second corner there, Tom, but all slicing and dicing, probably having fun.
Good run for the 93 off of that corner. There's some pretty significant damage on the 73, which is the white and teal car at the front of this line. So a number of run-ins throughout the first lap. Here in race 2, the car's off. Ooh, big tank slapper does a nice job to save it, keep it pointed the right way, but he's got to get back on the track. He's barely going to make it.
I don't like this coming. Yeah, he's going to just stomp on the brakes and get back in line. Good call there. Meanwhile, for the race lead, look at Saxon and Hawken dogging each other over the crest of the hill here through turn number 8. And I think Hawken is looking a lot more racy this time around.
Yeah, this is about as close as he was. He was a little closer on the final lap. He was really almost glued to the back of Saxon. He still needs to be a little bit closer because I don't think this move can happen with no overlap down into the final corner. If it did, it would be an agreement between both drivers that it's okay to go side by side, because coming from that far back with no overlap into the braking zone at turn 11 is just not going to work if the other guy doesn't agree to it.
Ismael Basso and Jack Sanchez both getting into the fence at the exit at turn 11. Don't tell me they're not using all the racetrack. They're using every inch, and they wanted the concrete wall to move an extra inch just for them. That is not going to happen, and they did get a little bit of a scrape there. Here's George Fike in the 09 alongside Max Bauman in that gray and yellow car. But I'm just watching the gap between these front two, and it has not gone above 0.2 of a second for the last lap and a half or so, and it's making me nervous. I want to stay up here in case something happens.
Well, and they're so inch perfect, and now the top four really are kind of running in that perfect formation. Chris Henn has ebbed and flowed just a little bit, but again, driving much more exuberantly and dramatically, what we expect from him. But also, I don't think it's paying him dividends, because every mistake he loses the progress he's made. Was there contact? I don't have audio.
He did hit that wall. He hit it pretty good there too. Picked up some left front damage. I think we've seen Pete go out there pretty wide. He was one of the cars on the opening lap that went out there really wide. It's just not worth it, in my opinion, especially once you bend in those fenders. But yeah, that was a big boom.
And check out who's just in front. Kundinger made the move somewhere along this race after not being able to get by last time, and he is hounding Ficacci, both in the top 10 now. Peak has got some body damage from that impact. He's going to have a lot of problems with Riley Thompson and the rest behind him, really pressuring. But these guys have separated out from the rest of the field. It's Chris Henn still in this one too. It's a 5-car battle.
Whoa, Kundinger, he's going to earn himself the nickname of Postman. We're going to have to strip it from Chris Henn because he's been behaving tonight. Kundinger, on the other hand, has been driving in the pile driver a little deep into turn 11 every time, and it's working. He got to the outside of Ficacci, and now he can hang out here through the left-hander at turn 1 and might be able to complete this pass, but Ficacci's holding on tough.
It's trying, but the short way up the hill is usually the fastest, and it finally pays off for Carter Kundinger to lunge up the inside in 11, picks up another spot up to 8th, and now he's got a long way to go to get back up to Del Campo. Not quite that long way to go. They're almost there, but he's making great progress this race after probably being pretty frustrated, stuck behind Peak the entire time in race 1.
Sees a couple drivers dropping wheels off at the crest of the hill there at turn 3A. Paul Darling, trouble. Oh no, right across the racetrack, because he's going to pick up, I think, Chris Taylor. He's right in the middle of the racetrack. Oh man, look out, everybody's dodging left and right. And Paul Darling, just like that, is out of this race, at least for the win. I wonder, was there a touch maybe from behind, or no, he just ran out and tagged the wall himself.
Wow, tagged it with the rear of the car too.
Oh.
He was so close to almost making it. I was trying to look at the front to see if there was damage and why there might have been a contact at the wall, but he hit it with the rear, and that was just how hard these guys have to push. Use every single inch, just a little bit too much. That's might be too many goose eggs on the scoreboard for this early in the championship too.
Yeah, that's frustrating. Chris Taylor tried to miss him and just couldn't get right fast enough, and we're right on board here with the 53 and see what he saw. Yeah, you're right. Too many goose eggs, maybe.
Remember the sightline conversation? He doesn't even know that this is happening until way after it started and just didn't have enough time to react. The first two cars had a much better idea that spin was happening in front of them. They got through cleanly.
Well, he's still rolling, and he's still 6th, so he didn't give up a whole lot of time. I fear that car is probably damaged fairly heavily. Carter Kundinger putting all sorts of pressure on him right now. Fakachi, look at this gaggle starting to form behind him.
That makes it kind of a 3-car breakaway at the front, but this battle for 5th on back is killer. Look at that stream of cars, all of them, about 10 of them in a row coming over the crest at turn 3, and now all of them have to make it through turn 4. Big hops, a couple of them scare the wall again.
No, another one. That time it's Bresci, I think. No, it's Sanchez in the 23, and stuck right in the middle of the racetrack again on corner exit. A terrible place to be stopped, and he's going to reset the car. But another driver just one lap later making the same mistake. And you know what's interesting about this corner, Tom, is I've watched drivers race here at this track professionally for a decade, and I've never seen anyone actually crash here. Even in NASCAR, for the years I've been watching, never seen anyone crash here. But in the sim, it will bite you, and just too wide, too fast. And then Bresci hit the fence trying to miss him.
Yeah, it's kind of a carbon copy of what we saw the previous lap, but I think that might be down to the spidey sense that you have in a real car. It's a much more natural feel to the space around you and your spatial concepts, versus here in the simulator, it's much harder to pick up on, and the drivers who can pick up on it tend to succeed a lot better, but even the best lose track of it sometimes. I'm first one guilty of that, and a couple of our drivers have kind of lost track of that little box around the car. You got to be able to envision it and pretend it's there, because obviously we're in a simulator, but the consequences are real.
Yeah, the consequences are really real, and for the 55 of Paul Darling, done for the night, will not be able to salvage it. And like you mentioned, unfortunately, I think that's too many mulligans this early in the season. You've got to be nearly perfect. Nathan Saxon has been not perfect, but awful close to it so far this season. It's going to take a lot for Darling to dig himself out of that hole if he wants to seriously win this championship.
All three of these guys here at the front have been very, very strong. Obviously, Hawken with that 1 point scored in the second round of the championship. Interestingly, I just happened to glance down the list, and Jonathan White is not here tonight. I don't think I've seen that car at all, and he was 3rd in the championship, so that's going to promote a bunch of people up just on the fact that they're here. But look at how close he is. This is as close as he was on the last lap of the previous race. Can he do it this lap?
No, he's wide. He just couldn't quite get the car turned in. He's going to give up a little bit of ground, but you could see that he was testing the waters. How close could he be and still get traction with those front tires through turn 10? Didn't get it that time, but he's definitely looking racier than he was the previous round, and I think he's ready to bring the fight to Nathan Saxon. I think Nathan Saxon sees this, though, and I don't think there's any secrets about what Hawken's trying to do.
No, for sure, and I think this is why, again, without there being a massive drafting opportunity on this track, just consistency and raw pace are critical tonight. So he may be doing absolutely everything he's got, but he's just really not getting much help from the air off the back of that 16. If anything, maybe a little bit of push through the S's as we saw him wash wide, but I think that there's not much aero wash with these cars. Maloney is looking strong this lap. Has started to pull away from Hen and closing back up, and those 4 are absolutely clear of the field.
0.8 of a second now to 7 here as he comes through turn 4. You know, the other thing that's making this exceptionally challenging is the gear ratios in this SPEC MX-5 Challenge car. At the exit of turn 4A, the one where we're jumping the berm and almost hitting that wall, you have to shift while you're airborne. So I'm sure that's not easy either. It's probably pretty easy to miss a shift and make a mistake in that regard. Riley Thompson, I think, has had a problem, or at least was slow in turn 7. Let's see, or this is actually turn 4. Basso had a look here to driver's right. He just let Basso on by, didn't want to contest it.
No, there was contact between the car ahead of Thompson and Basso, who slowed down to relinquish that position, gentlemanly move, but there was a door at the apex there at turn 7. Going back to your comment about the gearing, a lot of times these cars, you can actually pick up a little bit of corner entry speed by downshifting the car kind of almost into the rev limiter, it really pivots the drive line and brings the rear end around to start rotating the car into the corner artificially, and then you've got to basically rip the upshift back into the preferred gear. But if you don't do that downshift, sometimes the car just won't turn in. So it's kind of a guarantee to make sure the car gets that rotation on entry, and it's also why we see sometimes people blowing downshifts and blowing engines. But that's the key. These fast drivers have figured out, if I downshift, I'm flirting with that over revving, but I can get the car into the corner faster.
Carter Kundinger has a great run here on Chris Taylor. Again, remember this 53 car is pretty heavily damaged from that contact with the 55 of Paul Darling. So the 92 is keeping the pressure on. And see those front two only a car length apart up the road. 3 laps to go this time through means 2 laps next time by. That's 4 miles worth of racing. And Kundinger is starting to see that clock tick down to 0, and I think he knows that if he wants to get top 5, Del Campo up the road is where he needs to be.
Well, we know he's not afraid to make a move down into 11, so if he can get a little bit of benefit from aero struggles from Taylor, the black and yellow car, if it's a little slow in a straight line, we're going to see Kundinger make a lunge there at turn 11 before this thing's over.
Hawken is really good through this S's portion. It's this last corner, turn 10, where he's a little weaker than I think he needs to be, but look how good he got through there at that time. Ryan Maloney's on the edge of control for sure. Out in the dirt. Oh, here he goes down the inside, has a look. I don't think it was a serious look, but it's making Saxon second guess, and he's wide at the exit of turn 11. Here comes that 99.
Yeah, just filled the mirrors a little bit. Remember what I said, if you don't have a little bit of overlap, it takes 2 cars to tango to go side by side through there. Saxon was not having any of it, went for the apex anyway. Maybe came off the brake pedal a bit to try to roll some speed, and that's why we saw him go wide. But Saxon is very aware that Hawken has 1 move to make once per lap, and he's only got 2 more chances to try it.
That's if he makes that pass down in turn number 11, which is where the 16 car is expecting it. That's why I suggested earlier, if Hawken were to try something somewhere else, if you could get a run anywhere else, I'm looking at turn number 7 as being the secondary passing opportunity. Do it there. Catch him off guard. Take him by surprise. That's how you're going to beat Nathan Saxon. I think doing it in such a planned area might be a little too easy for Saxon to defend, but Hawken can't build a good enough run here into turn 7.
He's trying, though. He filled the mirrors again. He's kind of half committing to that juke up the inside lane, but Saxon did not have a great run through turn 4. So down into turn 7, I do think Hawken could have kind of forced the issue a little bit. It wasn't going to make a move, but if he can just get Saxon to open the door a bit, get off his rhythm, he might be able to trick him into a mistake and then catch him off guard again at 11. But again, the opportunities are going away very quickly.
Chris Taylor and Kundinger are still about a car length and a half apart. Down in the hairpin here, you can see the drivers coming to you at the top right of your screen. Hawkins steps out of line for a moment, but he's not close enough. He closes on the braking down to inches away from that rear bumper. Here comes Kundinger up the inside of Taylor. This is for 6th. Throttles up. He looks like he'll be able to complete this unless Taylor can hang tough on the outside, which he is right now. They still got overlap.
He's going to try, and that aero wall is not going to kick in much on this front straightaway, but thinking back to the front, this is a very different shape than we saw up to the green flag. They're side by side at the apex of turn 2. Saxon has the preferred line, but somehow Hawken holds the outside, gets the preferred line. Now it's a 4-car battle for the lead. They touch going into 3. Oh, for 3A. Watch the curves. Try not to go too airborne. Saxon protects perfectly, but we didn't even see Hawken try to make a move until the last corner of the last lap. This time he's trying so hard.
He's way out wide at the exit of turn 4A, pulls the car back on course. Like I said, take Saxon by surprise. He took us by surprise. Up at the top of turn 2, who does that? Now around the outside through turn 7. Hawken wide, Saxon still there, side by side for half the lap here. Half a lap to go at Sonoma.
He's made the outside work in so many places that it just doesn't work here at Sonoma, and it's going to pay off. He almost gets the door shut, the final major S, that he is so strong through the section. He takes up the lead. Maloney tries to follow him through, 2 in the dirt.
Here comes Maloney, side by side with Saxon through turn number 10. If they fight this, that 99 will drive away. They're still side by side. They're going to run each other off the road here. No, they keep it on course. Here comes a 33 of Hen. 3 wide for a moment. Juke back to the right. Hawken is through. Can he pick up his second victory here in SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge? For second, it's a hornet's nest, but Brandon Hawken out of turn number 11. If he can get back to turn 12 without blowing that motor up or missing a gear, he's going to do it. Second win of his career. Brandon Hawken goes to victory lane at Sonoma. Maloney second, Saxon and Hen third and fourth. What a battle there at the end. Still not done. Ficacci and the 58 of Thompson fighting for 7th. Drag race back to the line here. Give it to the 51. Got it by a nose. Woo, man, that was a heck of a race. 62 thousandths between those guys. Still racing back to the checkers for a couple more drivers, but the majority are already through. Brandon Hawken, what a spectacular run up the hill to turn 2.
I can't. You were speculating that he might be able to make it happen somewhere else. We thought it might have been turn 7, but then we looked away for one moment. It happened in turn 1, and I don't even know how that happened, but he got a run around the outside of the first half of this lap and made it work in so many places. We're going to take a look at coming to that white flag. Hawken was really, really close. Maybe a poor run onto the front straight for Saxon, and then just kind of shows the nose. Saxon got lazy, left the door open, and somehow let them get door handle to door handle on the brakes for turn 2. And this is where this just doesn't really happen. Holding the outside, both of them super fair, leaving each other just enough room all the way to the dirt, avoiding the curbs, and they just make this all happen side by side. Such top level driving. And then the move from Maloney later in this lap to pick up the spot following Hawken through on Saxon was also just masterful.
The masterful move for me was hanging tough on the outside of turn 3A at the crest of that hill, keeping the nose in there, and then getting the long run around turn 4A and then here in turn 7. That was crucial. If he wasn't on the outside here, I don't think he would have been able to muscle his way by for the lead. He got it done in the S's here because he pinched the 16 over to the right and then has this long left to almost complete it. And then right there, the 16 had to back out with masterful driving by Hawken. He might have a white base livery denoting that he's a rookie in the series, but he is no rookie driver, Tom. That was a veteran move by the newcomer in the series. And then Maloney came out of nowhere to fight the 16, which made Hawken's life even easier.
And watch this move, Maloney. As soon as he had the move, he could make it. He did one move. Again, it was kind of a block, but you get one, and he moved all the way across the track to protect from what almost was a 3-wide moment. Closed the door on Saxon. Hen had to check up just a little bit, and then they left the drag race to happen for third.
That was a spectacular run to the checkers for Brandon Hawken, his second win. And again, wins coming to him in rounds 2 and rounds 3, and he probably should have won at Road America in round number 1, but had the penalty for the contact with Paul Darling. What a race, what a drive. Here are your race results. We're going to kick it off all with the drivers that started up in the top 10, and that's how they finished. But Hawken, Maloney, first and second. Saxon comes home in third. Still a good points night, though. He'll take a lot away from this one. Hen, Del Campo, the rest of the top 5. Carter Kundinger up to 6th in the closing moments.
It's a heck of a charge. Inherited a couple of positions from attrition, a couple of positions from great moves, and I don't think the gaps tell the whole story, because a lot of times in SPEC MX-5 we see tiny little gaps because of great drafting battles. That was a proper race as far as I'm concerned. So awesome to see all 3 of those drivers, all 4, throw Chris Hen in there, really respect each other and put on a great show.
Looking down 11th through 20th, a couple drivers here that might have, or probably could have had some better runs. Thomas Bressi, 17th. I would have thought I'd see him a little bit higher today. No one really made a lot of noise in terms of driving through the field. We knew it would be hard to pass here, Tom, but not a lot of big movers around the field tonight.
No, and I think that's going to be pretty unique to this round for this championship, because so many of the other tracks are going to be affected by that draft. And again, because there wasn't one here tonight, I don't think there were major charges, but there on the 3rd page of results, Chris Taylor, a bit of a heartbreak in 26th, Paul Darling, heartbreak in 30th. A number of championship consistent drivers finally slipping up tonight and really putting themselves on the back foot for the remaining couple of rounds.
Yeah, we got Mid-Ohio coming up in a couple weeks. But before we go anywhere, we got to talk to our top 3 finishers here in race number 2. Nathan Saxon won the first race of the night, came home in 3rd in race 2. It was a mad scrap to the end there, Nathan, and I was probably discussing earlier about Brandon Hawken, expecting him to maybe take you by surprise, and he took us by surprise with the move at the top of the hill. Walk us through not only your win in race 1, but also that last lap in race number 2.
Well, race 1 was honestly pretty uneventful, which I definitely appreciated. But yeah, race 2, Brandon definitely had the better car, and it was just so hard to pass here. And figured I'd give him the outside in a 1, and he held it. So I'm happy we definitely put on a show there for everyone.
A show for sure, but this is, again, a season-long championship. We're only 3 rounds into what is a much longer championship. Great points night regardless. Is that the focus right now, is nailing those points? And are you willing to maybe forego a victory just to make sure that you finish the race and get those points?
Absolutely, especially seeing what happened with Brandon and Paul at Road America. I mean, that puts those guys on the back foot. And anyone who gets knocked out of a race, especially race 1, it'll kind of ruin your whole season. So yeah, top 3, absolutely thrilled with this result. I'm not the biggest fan of Sonoma, and it's so hard to pass at this layout, so I'll take it.
Nathan, a solid run, 1st and a 3rd tonight. Congratulations. We'll see you at Mid-Ohio in 2 weeks' time. Best of luck to you there.
Thanks, Kyle, and thanks to everyone for putting on this broadcast. It's awesome.
All right, thanks, Nathan. We'll see you at mid-O. Moving on now to Ryan Maloney, who snuck in at the last few moments and wrestled away second from Nathan Saxon. Ryan, maybe an opportunity to go for the win had things shaped out a little bit differently, but sure you got to be thrilled with second after running in fourth most of that race.
Yeah, I was basically just sitting back there in third, just hanging on, waiting for them to start fighting so I could get a little bit closer. But yeah, was able to get on the inside of them and hold it on the outside of that sweeper and got it done.
Tonight, it seemed like it was really, really challenging to pass. We didn't see a lot of drivers move up the field a whole lot. We saw a few move down the field a bunch with some accidents and collisions. This is a hard racetrack to pass. We head to Mid-Ohio in 2 weeks. Is that going to look a lot different than this race and be more like the first two we saw, or do you think Mid-Ohio will race a lot like Sonoma?
Yeah, I think Mid-Ohio is definitely going to be more like Road America, where just a lot more drafting down that long back straightaway and definitely a lot more passing zones. Here it was just kind of tough. If mainly your only passing zone was that hairpin, so if they blocked that, you kind of had nowhere to go.
Well, it was a really strong run for you tonight, Ryan. A good points night for sure as well. A fourth and a second. Not a bad evening. Good luck to you, Mid-Ohio. We'll see you there.
Yep, thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, Ryan. We'll move on now to Brandon Hawken, a rookie in the series, but certainly not a rookie on the racetrack. Brandon, a second win in 2 rounds and looking really, really strong. Still a bit of a hole to dig out of because of the Road America incident in round number 1, but already new to the series and making waves, making a big splash here, and masterful driving on that last lap. Take us through that battle there in race number 2.
Well, thanks, Kyle. Man, that was a pretty crazy last lap for sure. Nathan had a ton of speed. He was super quick the entire time, and yeah, I thought, yeah, I just stay behind him, let him lead, and try not to, because if I tried to get side by side with him, I didn't want people behind catching up. So I thought we'd just kind of stay in line, and then last couple laps there, I tried making a move, didn't quite work, and then I found just a little gap on the left coming into the first corner, and I took it, and he did a great job staying off of me, and we were able to go side by side for pretty much over half a lap. So that was pretty incredible. Really good racing.
Well, race number 1, we saw you hounding Nathan Saxon for the entirety of the race, but you weren't able to get the job done there. It almost looked like he spooked you coming down to turn 11 because he went defensive, something you hadn't seen him do yet. What did you learn from race 1 that helped you do something different in race 2 to win the race?
Yeah, I learned to not. I was looking at the time, and I was looking at the laps, and I didn't know that the timer was going to go down before the laps were finished because it was a scheduled 15. So I thought there were still a couple laps left. So I just made sure to. I looked at the time, I looked at the laps, and I'm like, okay, the laps are gonna finish before the time ends this time. So I was also able to clean up my line a little bit and learn from Nathan a bit there, because he was really quick in that first one. So I was just trying to learn a couple things what he was doing, and was able to just stay on him, and tried making my move a couple laps earlier, just because that didn't work out the first race.
Well, Brandon, you crushed it again for another round. We head to Mid-Ohio in 2 weeks. Chance for a third victory out there, or is that one circled as maybe one that's a bit more of a challenge?
I hope so. I really love Mid-Ohio, so yeah, we'll see how it goes. It's gonna be really crazy down the long straightaway with the draft, and it should be a really tight battle. So hopefully we can get another one. And if not, that's cool too. But really want to aim for the podiums and just have a good rest of the season. It's been a blast so far.
Well, crushing it out there. A second victory in just as many rounds, Brandon. Congratulations. We'll see you at Mid-O in a few weeks. All right, Tom. Well, round 3, the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge is complete. Interesting to hear from Hawken that the reason why he was a little bit panicky in those closing laps is because he didn't realize the race was a little shorter than he thought. So I'm sure that things might have looked a little different had he known, which is a bad thing for everybody else. If that was Hawken, caught off guard, imagine if he knows when the race is going to end, what he could do.
Perhaps, but he might have actually inherited the upper hand with being as patient as he was and really attacking so aggressively at the end of that second race, because I think it caught Saxon off a little bit more than it would have if he had been responding to that kind of pressure the entire time. But moving towards Mid-Ohio, I think we're going to see something more similar to what we did at Summit Point, where there's a couple places that you can kind of creatively pass somebody, but in general, there is one longer straightaway, one place that you can draft up to somebody and make an obvious move. So things shifting around as we move from round to round here. Finally, Saxon and Maloney are really the only two who have not slipped up this entire season. They've absolutely established themselves as the front runners, but this is the first time Maloney has beaten Saxon all season. That's going to be critical if he can keep doing that, and Hawken is doing everything in his power to make up for the slip up early this season. I think those three are the three to beat, and then there's just the wild cards of everybody else trying to do their best.
Trying to do their best, and the problem is trying's not going to do it. You got to show those results, and for Paul Darling, he's trying real hard, but the results are just not coming in the consistency that he needs to be a champion. So hoping that Paul Darling can get his program back on track at Mid-Ohio in a couple weeks. It's a track that he's got some real-life experience at, which will not hurt. But again, a favorite perhaps for race wins, but the consistency not there. He'll get another chance to go for it in 2 weeks' time at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. I'm Kyle Heyer with two-time Pirelli World Challenge champion and four-time IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge winner Tom O'Gorman. We'll see you next time here on Winding Road Magazine for the SPEC MX-5 Sim Racing Challenge.